Goodbye 2024. This year was full of a lot of ups, some downs, a lot of growth, and more blessings that I could even imagine. In this video, I want to recap my year and talk a little bit about it. This year was a really special one for me. For starters, this was my first full year of being married, and it was an absolutely beautiful experience. Me and my wife Reagan have learned a lot about each other, how we operate together as a unit, but also we've learned a lot about each other as individuals. If you're on the cusp or you're wondering about getting married, one of my pieces of advice is just be sure you're with the right person. Be with someone and find someone that elevates you and you elevate them. Life is about growing in one way or another. And one of the most beautiful things about growing is finding someone to grow with. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, in every aspect. I'm very grateful and very blessed that I was able to find my person and the one that helps me be the best version of me. Another reason I made this year so unique was I set a really hard goal for myself. Last year, I did 2 bodybuilding shows, one in September and one in November. The one in September was my very first one. That was down in Las Vegas, where me and Jeremy both actually competed in our first bodybuilding shows. And what's funny is when we were competing in that show, around that time, the OCB Boise show was announced. And when we found that out, we figured we might as well do it too. We continued prep, and we brought the best physiques that we had at the time. It was a beautiful experience because I got to witness one of my best friends, Jeremy, win his natural pro card in that show. And how cool was it to be right here in our hometown pretty much? But I didn't do as well. Now, there were a lot of factors that went into it. I didn't have a coach in that second show. I didn't know what I was doing. And if you were to see a side-by-side picture of me in that show and then me in this show this year, you could tell how inflamed I was. I did not prep right at all. I just depleted myself heavy. And the placing reflected that. And so I set a goal that I would train my ass off. I would prep, and then I was going to do the Boise show the following year and hopefully take the overall. I bulked up. I got pretty damn big. I actually am not going to plan to get that big again. Hopefully I'm putting the fat and the muscle in the right spots this time. But I got pretty big. And I had a long prep. At about the 6 weeks out mark from the Boise show, me and my coach had to have a conversation. Do I want to do this show as maybe like a warm-up show and maybe do another one? Or do I want to push the show day and just bring the best package possible to that one show day? We ended up coming to the decision together that we're going to extend prep and skip the Boise show and find a later show date. It was actually a really cool experience because I actually worked the Boise show, so I was still there and I was able to support some of my buddies in it, but I was still in prep. I gave my coach the 2 show dates that were going to work best for me, which was either November 23rd or December 7th. And once my coach picked between one of those dates, I was going to choose a show. We landed on November 23rd, and given travel and just the best experience for me and the wife, we ended up going to DeKalb, Illinois, to compete in the OCB Midwest States Natural. Let's start with the cons. One, I was not a fan of how the OCB Midwest States ran their show. If you saw my vlog, you could tell I was not happy at the end of it. Was placing part of that mindset? Maybe. But even after a long time post-show, I'm still not happy with how it was ran. I felt that it was pretty disorganized. I wasn't a fan of how the venue was ran. Like most OCB shows I've been to, you just pay a certain fee at the door and then that gets you whatever seat you get. For this venue, the ticket price is based on where you sat. So, you sat in the back, you got a cheaper ticket. If you sat close to the front, you're gonna have to pay a bigger ticket. And the tickets were crazy. I'm pretty sure it was like $70 or something for where my wife sat. But the biggest thing that I wasn't a fan of was just how the show times ran. In the OCB Federation, at least every single show I've been to, and I've been to Las Vegas, Colorado, Boise, and I know the promoters who run shows on the East Coast as well as a couple in California. Every single one of them, they start at 10 for the men's. They run through the men's show, and the men are done by like 1 p.m. And then the women's show start, and then they run through, and then they're done by like 4:30 p.m. or something. In this case, for the OCB Midwest States, the show started at 1. They ran through all the men, doing their comparisons, but instead of going into our individual routines and then awards, then they went through all the women's comparisons. Which, a side note, it was kind of wild to see on the bikini women's. They had like 2 classes up there that had like 12 people, and we watched on the clock that they were up there for like 20 minutes. 2 classes were up there for at least 20 minutes. So 2 classes took like 45 minutes in general. And there were a lot of classes in this show. It was like 100 competitors. So I went up and did my comparisons at like, I don't know, 2:30, let's say. Maybe it was around 2. And then we sat and we waited all freaking day until our individual routines started at like 5:30 or something. So for like 3-4 hours, we were laying on this venue floor. I was on a few rice cakes, couple scoops of peanut butter, and like teeny sips of water. So I felt like shit. We finally did our individual routines, finally did awards, and then we were out of the venue by like 7 or 7:30. And that was us getting out right when my class was done getting their awards, because we were done. We were tired, we were hungry, it was time for us to go. There was still some show left to go. Now, why wasn't I a fan of this? I didn't like it because I felt like time-wise and efficiency-wise, you should just run through. Even if the women's show was first and then the men's, I didn't really care, but they should have just run through one of the male or female shows completely and then gone through the next. It just added so much extra time. My wife was talking about people in the crowd who didn't like it either, because there are people supporting, the men's show, and then they had to sit and wait for hours just to wait for us to go back up, do our 30-second individual routine, and then go get our awards. I do see it from a venue standpoint, from the promoter standpoint of he's probably doing it to make sure there's a bigger crowd. But, I mean, it just was wild. I felt like crap the whole day. Most of the competitors that I talked to back there who have done other OCB shows didn't like the way it was ran either. Safe to say that the next show I do, I'm not going to be competing in the OCB Midwest states. And I honestly wouldn't recommend you guys to. If you are looking to do an OCB show, I would look for one that does the start at 10, end at like 1 or 1:30, and then go into the women's show and they just bust it out. But now for the pros. I brought the best physique that I have ever had, hands down. I peaked well thanks to my coach Ricky. I was pretty full, I was striated, I was lean, and the most important thing was, in comparison to last year, I was not as inflamed. I could tell in the physique that I peaked well. That made me insanely happy, because at the end of the day, it sets me up for a successful bulk. Another pro, I met some absolutely stellar people. The guys were awesome, they were super nice, and there was a camaraderie with all of us backstage, feeling like shit and just waiting for this show to continue on. There was something to that. We were literally sitting back there, and a couple of us were just, for like 45 minutes, just listing off things that we were excited to have after the show, and we were just talking about different sweets and different snacks that we're going to be munching on. Shout out to the guys that I made friends with. If you guys watch it, it was an absolutely amazing time, getting to know you guys, and it was a pleasure, and I do hope that we can all find a show and compete with each other again. There was a great lineup at that show, great dudes, great physiques. I was excited about that aspect. And the last pro was, it was a competitive show, and that's what I wanted at the end of the day. The Boise show, I thought the competition wasn't as amped up as I would have liked it to be. I wanted to go against the best that I possibly could and see where I matched up against that. The dude who won it looked absolutely insane. He was huge, and he literally had veins like coming across his chest, his abdomen, all down his legs. Like, it was a pretty wild physique. Definitely something I'm going to aim for. So what are some things I learned during that prep? One was that I could go harder, and I found a new level of intensity. There were times where I felt like I was maxed out and I was doing all I could, and then I found another level. I dug deeper than I ever have in this prep, and I'm excited to essentially build off that for this bulk. I also learned that I have a long way to go, but it isn't out of reach. I learned that I have a frame for this sport and this division, and I just got to build on it. The main things are going to be just mostly upper body and just growing overall in time, which is a really good thing. If I didn't have anywhere to grow or progress, then what'd be the point, right? So this is a great foundation for me, and now it's just time to build on it, and build on it in a clean and efficient way this time. Which leads me into the next thing I learned was I'm going to reverse out of this as best as possible. I have a plan. Versus last year, I didn't have a plan coming out of the bulk. I just pretty much started stuffing myself with a lot of food. It was mostly good food, but I was just stuffing myself. This time, I'm still eating as best I can. Even though the holidays definitely screwed up some of it, I'm definitely on a better track than last year, I think. But aside from the bodybuilding aspect part of my year, there was also a lot of growth in my business as well. I was able to upgrade cameras from the Sony a7 III to the Sony FX3, which is what I'm filming on right now. And I was able to get into another camera, the Sony FX30, which is my B cam. I hardly ever use this, but this definitely comes in handy for some of the jobs I end up doing, and it makes it just that much easier that this stays within the cinema line, just like the FX3. And that was my plan getting into this camera. And I did upgrade and got a GoPro 13 as well. This was used for my hunting trip, and I never use GoPros, but this is something that for those off times I do go hunting, or I'm going to maybe go up in the mountains and go snowboarding, whatever, I'm able to document that as well with this. Another huge milestone for myself was I was able to finally start working with Ghost Lifestyle. I love creating content. As you guys have seen, I like doing reviews, and I like just talking about my experience with the supplements that I take. Being able to work with these guys, start talking about the new upcoming drops that they have, it's been an absolute blessing, and it just kind of reminds me of where I started with a couple years ago, of when I started wanting to create content in general about fitness and being able to get to this point. It's kind of surreal in my eyes. I can't wait to see what 2025 holds for that aspect of my life. Another awesome thing is we got a new cat, a new family member. Hi. This is Clementine. She is just an absolute doll. She's beautiful. Look at that face. She's just been an absolutely amazing addition to our family. Look at her. Hey, sweet pea. Never thought I'd be a cat person. I've always been kind of a dog dude, but this cat's pretty freaking awesome. This year, I also got to film the OCB shows like I talked about a little bit. I've just gotten to meet so many amazing OCB athletes, men and women, with amazing inspirational stories. I truly think this is one of the best bodybuilding federations you can compete in, so if you do ever want to compete, I highly recommend trying the OCB. And if anything, OCB Colorado if you can get to it. Those shows are ran amazing. And as for travel, I only see myself traveling more this year. I got to see some awesome places. Went to the Arnold for the third time this year. Crazy as ever. Got to visit Cellucor's headquarters down in Austin, Texas. Check out that vlog if you haven't. That was one of my favorites, hands down. The facility was awesome. The people are dope. We were just drinking C4 Energies all day long. Now looking forward to 2025. Things are going to be more or less the same, but there are going to be a lot of differences as well. You guys are going to see soon, but I did bring on a new client to be working with this year. There's some awesome content that's going to be made, and I'm excited to show you guys who it is and what we're going to be doing. I am still working with PricePlow, so I know there's going to be a lot of travel with that and a lot of crazy awesome content to come. For bodybuilding, I will not be competing this year. I will be taking at least a year and a half off to truly bulk, more like 2 years though. I really want to grow. I don't want to go from one show to the next, year after year. I want to give my body time to recover, to grow, and to truly bring a better package than I did the last time. So I'll be documenting all the intense workouts, especially with Jeremy and Kyle. I'm sure we're going to be lifting a ton this year together. But I'm also going to switch up the training just a little bit and might do a little bit of hybrid training as well, just to have fun with it. That's been one of the main things that I've enjoyed in this off season so far, is I've just re-enjoyed training again. And that's a story you hear a lot with bodybuilders coming out of prep, is you sometimes take a little time just to have fun in the gym. Push it hard, do some exercise you haven't done in a while, and have fun with it. At the end of the day, I think that's what it should be about, you know? That's why I started working out. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It made me feel better. And then you do prep, and you do it for so long sometimes that it starts to feel like a job. And you want to limit that as much as possible. Because I think in every prep, there's going to be that feeling of, I don't want to go, this does feel like a job. And you got to take that time when prep is over to just re-fall in love with the sport again. I want to say thank you guys so much for everyone who supported me in 2024. God bless you. I hope 2025 is just as beautiful as this year was. Let's get better together.